Hey everyone, welcome again to Physical Geography, Geography 1. I am re-recording this intro to the syllabus lecture because apparently the first one I posted had no sound. So hopefully this one will work. I think there was a problem with my microphone. So I, again, am Jamie Rossiter. I can be found at the email address listed here, jrossiter0@saddleback.edu. There was another J. Rossiter who taught at Saddleback before me, so I get a 0 after my name. Make sure you have that 0 in there, otherwise you will not reach me. I have office hours online on Mondays from 10 to 11 a.m. on Google Hangouts. You do not need a Gmail address in order to use Google Hangouts. Simply go to Google Hangouts and you can register with any email address, and then you can look me up with my Saddleback email address. You can also make an appointment with me to meet on Google Hangouts, where we can chat or even video talk if you would like outside of that 10 to 11 hour, or you can just email me your questions. I do not have an occasion to be at Saddleback's campus this semester, as I am not teaching in person there, but if you would like to meet me in person, we can arrange that. So the course description, which this course description is a little bit different than the one listed on your syllabus, but I like this one a little bit better. This course examines the major world patterns of the environment. The course covers the fundamental information and processes dealing with the Earth's atmosphere, climate, landforms, natural vegetation, water, and soils, along with appropriate use of maps and charts. And so there's going to be lots of maps and charts, but not as many as you might think. A lot of people, when they think of geography, they think of maps and charts. But we do a lot more. We are going to be talking about everything from how hurricanes form to how mountains are made. It is really a broad survey course in all the physical aspects of our planet. Your required text for the semester is McKnight's Physical Geography 12th edition by Darrell Hess. That being said, the 11th edition is just fine, and you can find the 11th edition online for a lot cheaper. I wouldn't go back any further than the 11th edition, but there's not much of a difference between the 11th and 12th edition, and you can successfully complete the course with the 11th edition. There's also a California edition out there, which is on its 4th edition. You can also use the California edition if you know somebody who has that. I know some professors do use the California edition. It's basically the same textbook. It just adds a little bit more information on California in there. For those of us who are teaching in California, I use the regular one, but you are welcome to use either one of those. You're expected to be reading along each week with the chapters that are listed on the course schedule. And so I realize that some of you might not have the textbook right now. You should be able to make it through the module without the textbook, the first one at least, although it's easier with the textbook. But you're going to want to get that as soon as possible. You're going to want to know your way around Canvas, which is where our course is. This is my first full semester using Canvas. And I started using it at the beginning of the semester with my full semester online class. And it seems to be going very smoothly. I've used Blackboard for years, though. If you find something is a little wonky on Canvas, something of mine that is not displaying right, please let me know so that I can fix it. That being said, if you're having overall trouble with Canvas or you want to know more about Canvas, you're going to want to access the resources on Saddleback's campus to do that. I am not the person to teach you how to use Canvas or the ins and outs of it, but there are resources available through the student IT department. And so when you logged into the to the course, you should, this is what you should be seeing. So we have our introduction to the course where you're starting here. Hopefully you watched that first video and now you're watching the intro to the syllabus. You can also find the syllabus here. And then each week is divided into a single module. There's 8 modules total in this course. And so you are meant to kind of click through each one of these items one at a time in the module and complete the entire module consecutively. Modules become available at midnight on Sunday usually a tiny bit earlier. And then you have until midnight the following Sunday to complete it. There is one exception to that. I should say exception, not exceptions. The last module is due on a Wednesday, as that is the last day of the class. So you actually have an extra few days to complete that module. I don't give you a really short one. So that last one is due on that Wednesday. I can't accept any work after that Wednesday, so you're going to want to make sure to get it all in before then. So how is the coursework divided up? Basically, there are quizzes. Each module has a quiz at the end of it worth 15 points. In a short compressed class like this, I just test you on the material as we go, rather than having 3 big exams or 2 big exams. And I only do this for my 8-week classes because I find it's really hard to kind of break it up in an 8-week class. So once you complete the material for that module, you are quizzed on it for that week. That being said, some of the material in this class builds upon each other, so you can't really just like skip an entire module and then go to the next module. You might be missing some of that background material that you need, especially in the beginning of the class, that you'll need to understand for those later modules. So you're going to want to make sure that you complete all of those modules. Each module, in addition to having a quiz and lectures and videos for you to listen to, will have 2 to 3 exercises. Exercises are a question or an activity that you need to complete. A lot of them will be about 300 words that you'll need to write. I want you to make sure that your exercises are done in complete sentences, proofread with proper grammar. This is your main coursework for the course. And while it's an online class and we tend to use kind of informal language when we type emails, this is a college level class and you are expected to write at a college level for your exercises and assignments. There's also a weekly journal, which is worth 5 points each. There's 7 of those for the first 7 modules. And basically this is a kind of feedback mechanism between me and you to make sure that you're progressing in the class. So for that weekly journal, you're going to write to me about anything you struggled with or are struggling with in the class, and I'm going to give you feedback on that. So you're going to want to make sure you complete those every week. There's a final survey that's worth 10 points, which gives me general feedback on the class. That's anonymous, as a way for me to improve the class in the future. And then finally, there's a plagiarism quiz as part of Module 1. You're going to read about plagiarism this week and take this little plagiarism quiz. You can take it up to 3 times in order to improve your score. This is the only quiz that you can take up to 3 times, basically because I want the quiz to be like a way for you to learn about plagiarism. So that gives us a total of 360 points for the class. Late assignments, full credit for late assignments will only be given in case of a documented illness or another valid documented reason. 10% will be deducted per day for lateness. After 1 week, assignments will not be accepted. The one exception to this is the last module. You have to hand it in on the day it's due. I can't accept any assignments after that. If you are behind in a module and you do not get it done by Sunday night, it is certainly worth turning in late. You do not want to lose all of those points, right? It's better to lose 10 or 20% of those points than lose all of them, especially because we only have about 8 modules for this class. Special accommodations. If you have a physical or learning disability for which you receive accommodation, please let me know as soon as possible, within the next couple days. And email me copies of the documents associated with your disability accommodation. All materials posted to Canvas will be accessible to students with disabilities. Please let me know if you encounter any issues with accessibility. If you get extra time for your quizzes and exams, you're going to want to make sure that I know that soon so that I can build that into Canvas for you. Cheating and plagiarism, I'm not going to read this entire thing here, but you're going to learn, it's posted on the syllabus, you're going to learn about a lot about plagiarism this week. You should not be plagiarizing in an online class or any class for that matter, and especially because we're going through this in the first module, ignorance will not be accepted as an excuse. You can't tell me later on that you didn't know that something was plagiarism. You will receive a 0 on that assignment and be reported to the college. And if you have any questions, please email me or again see those materials that are part of Module 1. Here is our course schedule. And so our course, it moves very, very quickly, so do not fall behind. We cover 2 to 3 chapters per week. It's a lot to cover in just 8 weeks. And you can see here there's the module number, the days the module is open, the topics we'll cover, the chapters that you should be reading along with in your textbook, as well as the assignments that are due. So in the first module, we're going to do Intro to the Class, Intro to the Earth, Portraying the Earth, which is chapters 1 and 2, exercises 1 through 3, your plagiarism quiz, quiz 1, and your first weekly journal. So lots to cover. Again, try not to fall behind. For the last part of this intro to the class and the syllabus, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what is geography. If you are currently taking my online regional class, there is some overlap here. For a lot of people, this might be the only geography class that they get in college, and so I kind of need to cover some background material for both classes. If you are also taking the regional class right now, please email me because there are some things that you have to do in the beginning of this class that also had to be done in the beginning of the other class. And so I don't want you to have to repeat that stuff. So please email me and let me know. But basically, what is geography? It is the study of the Earth and the way we interact with it, and much, much more. I have geography friends, lots of geography friends who cover everything from hurricanes to Twitter. There are two main subfields of geography, physical geography and cultural geography. This is a physical geography class. In my world regional class, we do a mix of both physical and cultural geography. You can also take a cultural geography class with me in the future and learn all about cultural geography, which is a little bit more in line with kind of like anthropology. It's one of the reasons that I became a geographer, because I love the diversity of the discipline. Geographers have some main concepts in how they look at the world. I have 7 of them listed here, and I'll go through each of them individually, but they are location, space, place, human environment interaction, movement, networks, systems, and scale. So that first one, location, we can think about location in 2 different ways. We can think about absolute location versus relative location. Absolute location being like a specific point on the planet, a GPS location, or using latitude and longitude to let us know exactly where we are. And then there's also relative location, right? Where are we in relation to something else? In Southern California, right now we are south of LA at Saddleback. We also look at space, and so geographers are very concerned with how phenomena fill space, and I don't mean outer space, but the space all around us. So here's a racial dot map of Detroit. And so we can see here Detroit is highly segregated, right? There's a small Asian enclave kind of in the middle. And so as geographers, we want to know, like, what happened here? Why is Detroit such a segregated place? Then geographers also look at place or sense of place, and that is all those things that go into making a place a place. And we can look at that in a variety of different ways. We could talk about some place like the South. You're going to have very different ideas about the South if you lived in the South, if you grew up in the South, if you've never been to the South, if you've only watched something about the South on TV. Places like San Diego, I love this postcard here because it has kind of all of the iconic San Diego stuff in it, beaches and shorelines and the military and the Coronado Bridge and Balboa Park. Places like the city versus home. Facebook is a virtual place. There's lots of geographers out there that study these virtual places, right? We talk about Facebook like a place. People post things on your wall. Lots of virtual places are created through video games. People get very, very detailed in what these places look like. And then places like the ghetto. Like, what do we think about when we hear all of these different place names? The next is human environment interactions, which we'll talk about a lot more in this class, especially with concerns to climate change. But we'll talk about this a lot more than we'll talk about place. But what I mean by human environment interactions is we are always affecting the environment, and the environment is always affecting us. So for example, here's a picture of some industrial agriculture. And during industrial agriculture, we use a ton of fertilizers. And then if it rains, some of those fertilizers might get washed down into local waterways. And what those fertilizers do is they cause a bunch of algae to bloom. And you get a bunch of other life being choked out in that waterway due to a process called eutrophication, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the semester. But basically, this huge algae bloom is happening. And so now you might get a bunch of fish that have died due to the lack of oxygen and resources in the water. And maybe that was a spawning ground for those fish who maybe fishermen downstream are now suffering because there are less fish to be caught. So again, this idea that we are always affecting the environment is always affecting us. The next is movement and networks, which you would talk about a lot in my regional class. Things like how do things or people move through the environment, why do they move, and how does that shape the connections and separations between places and people. Here's a picture from a few years ago when we had an influx of unaccompanied minors coming to the U.S. border, mainly from Central America, fleeing violence. And so here we see a picture of people traveling through Mexico atop a train during that period of time trying to reach the U.S. border. So in my regional class, we talk lots about migration, where people are coming from and where they are going to. Less so in this class. What this class we're going to talk about a lot is systems. It is a physical science class, and physical science looks at systems. Things like inputs and outputs and interactions of matter and energy. This is a glacier system, which is either the last or the second to last chapter that we talk about in this course. Right? How does a glacier work? You have material inputs of snow and ice and rock and debris and solar radiation. And what is output from that system? More rock and debris, meltwater, water vapor, and then you lose some energy when that ice is melted. So this is the one that we'll probably focus on the most in this class, looking at things like the hydrologic system, how much solar radiation comes into the planet. And the last thing that geographers use is scale. And so we want to know what scale to look at a phenomena at, right? Are we looking at something on a local scale or a global scale? Is it a California issue or is it a federal government issue? And so this will become especially true when we're talking about climate change. So climate change, we want to look at it on a global scale to try to solve climate change because we're going to need a global reduction in emissions in order to deal with climate change. But many of the effects of climate change are felt locally. So just to wrap this up, your first exercise is actually going to be a discussion board where you're going to introduce yourself to me and to the rest of the class. So you're going to let me know, why are you taking this class? For a lot of people, it's going to be, I need to fill this requirement for my major, but let me know what that is, and that's fine. Maybe some of you are interested in being geography majors, but usually at this stage, people kind of get talked into geography rather than coming in and deciding they want to be geography majors, but you'll learn some of the reasons why geography is a great major over the course of this semester. Then I want to know any countries you have visited. If you have never left the United States, that's fine. Lots of my students have not left the United States. Just let me know what the most interesting place you visited has been, and then also why you were there. Were you on vacation? Did you used to live there? Were you in the military, etc.? So again, welcome to the class. I hope you enjoy it, and please be in touch if you have any questions or problems.